Welcome to the Crossroads Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Hunter Grand, your personal agent for change, making life easy, Barzini.
And I'm Fempreneur Extraordinaire, Tech Diva all day, Dre Renee.
And this is the Crossroads, where there's only one rule.
Be free to be you.
So I know I say in my intro, making life easy, but I guess that's not the case this morning.
Oh, for somebody.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Just that may not be the current reality, but we're gonna make it do what it do. Man, how's everybody doing? I hope everybody's been great. It's been a week.
Yeah. Putting out fires. And, just like as soon as your eyes open. This is so crazy to me. I mean, I'm sure it's all a test, right? Because I was really just thinking about, designing my morning or maybe redesigning my morning and how I want to wake up and, do my devotional. I remember I used to sit and, write reflections after I read my word and prayer and all of the things. And lately, literally, as soon as I open my eyes, it's something going on. It is like already like to the point where it has been already discussed and happening before I woke up. So like when I wake up, it's situation in progress. Like,
well, what did John Lennon say? Life is what's happening when you're planning something else. But that doesn't mean don't plan.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And so, I mean, it might be I need to start waking up before the times these things start happening. I need to catch them on the early.
Yeah, but you know what? I think also planning makes pivoting easier, right? Because you don't want to jump into those things and then you still forget what you plan to get done, but you can maneuver the plans according to the pivots. It's much like sports in that way. It's kind of like, hey, you spend all week preparing for this game. You don't watch the film, and then all of a sudden the game is going different than you planned for. So it's like, hey, we're just going to tweak or adjust the plan, but you can't tweak or adjust a plan that you haven't made, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like, hey, I have a plan. Here's a fire. I know I need to address the fire, but let me go over here and move the plan around so the plan can still happen,
right?
Just the priority of things on the plan change. So yeah, I mean, I think if we're honest, it's kind of like what is a plan for? And it's adjusting the mindset of what planning is for. We often think planning is for the opportunity to wake up and execute the things that we planned. And that's not real life. It's like we make a plan because if anything else happens, we can maneuver. You know what I'm saying? But without a plan, I can't maneuver. Right? It's just this thing. So, just my little 2 cents.
We'll get it one day. That's all I got to say.
Right. There's some people be like, yeah, man, F a plan. I'm gonna just go in there and improvise. Freestyle.
Right. Hilarious.
Yeah. I used to freestyle.
Yeah, that's even more stressful, honestly. But it works for some people.
It used to work for me when I was able to remember.
You know what? Because that's a thing. It's like, ooh, this isn't written down. This isn't calendared. This does not exist. Even things like things that are really important. But if it doesn't, if my watch or phone doesn't give me that 10-minute, like, hey, you got this call, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, if it ain't on the calendar, it doesn't exist. But a lot of times, I think a hard shift for me and a hard reality was like, hey, you got to start writing things down, bro. You got to start making checklists. You got to start using your calendar, because when I was young, my mind was sharp. Like, hey, I don't forget. I'm on it. I can da. And then all of a sudden life happens. Your body changes, that starts and your brain change, your mind changes. You know what I mean? And your brain starts to prioritize different things without having a conversation with you. You know what I mean? And so it's like you find yourself, I'll be at work, and I turned into this guy. I'll be at work and somebody will tell me something and they'll be like, don't forget. I ain't gonna forget. They'll be like, write it down because you're gonna forget. And I can't stand for somebody to tell me what I'm gonna do or not do. Right. I ain't gonna forget. 10 minutes later, I'm like, what they took?
What was it?
What was that thing they just told me to do? And then I turn in and I'm like, I'll still do the same thing. They're gonna tell me I'm gonna forget. I'm not gonna forget. And then when I forget, I get on them. You knew I was gonna forget. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I'll be like, hey, remind me not to forget the thing that I'm not supposed to forget. So
have mercy. Yeah, no. I'll be like, you on your own, bro.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget to acknowledge our sponsors so that
right,
we can stay open for business. So, y'all, as always, the Crossroads podcast is brought to you by the House of 334.
It's the house.
It is Black owned, it is woman owned, it is Black woman owned, and it is amazing. And make sure you move quickly because the house will fill up fast for all your business branding and copyright needs. The Crossroads podcast is also brought to you by the Crossroads. Y'all, you can go to our bit.ly for everything that we're doing. That's bit.ly/the Crossroads. That's THEXROSSROADZ to find out everything that we're doing, all of our socials, and most importantly, our Patreon. You can become a member to the Patreon community for the Crossroads. So you go to patreon.com/the Crossroads. Again, THEXROSSROADZ and become a member. That means you get exclusive content. You get early releases to the episode. So most of you are watching this premiere on a Thursday, but the community has it a few days earlier. So you're on top of all of the new episodes and more things to come. So we appreciate all of our members, all of the roadies and road dogs, whether you are a day one or a one day, we appreciate you all the same, but we don't want you to miss out and we want you to grow with us. This is for you. The content that we create is for you. So we look forward to seeing y'all in the Patreon community.
Come on over to Patreon where the cool kids are.
But what are we talking about today? Y'all? So today is a topic.
Today is a topic. It is single in your 30s and 40s, which we have experienced. So we're talking through whether you're there now in your 30s, maybe you might be in your 40s. And honestly, for anyone, because we know we have some senior and fabulous roadies and road dogs with us. And so maybe you're experiencing singleness later in life. And so please chime in as well, because, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Unfortunately, some are single because they are now widows or widowers, and so we know that we have those experiences among us. Some have never been married, and then some are divorced, some happily, some unhappily. So there's, a lot of different experiences. And then there are, seemingly the few of us that aren't in any of those categories, that we are married.
Or you're not even single. Oh yeah. Then
so, yeah. Or, in a relationship, because, I think that's important too, because some people define, single as not married. And some people are like, single is when you are unattached.
So or you got some that are married and still single.
Oh Lord. And then there's that. And then
so I'm saying, like, I'm married, but I'm not married. We gotta understand.
Lord Jesus.
That means one don't understand what you do.
A mess.
But yeah, the single experience though, it's easy because the conversation is usually one direction when we're talking single life. But I think the single experience is different for a lot of people. We just don't really hear the more favorable experiences, like the benefits of being single, or people are enjoying that part of life. And I wonder, it's like, is our mindset around being single shaped by what we have been programmed to desire or being told that we should have? Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because we we hear a lot like, oh, the purpose of dating is to get married. Is it?
I mean, that has to be defined by each individual person. But I would say far and wide, that's the narrative of society. Like, I don't think that people consider dating just to date, unless that is your personal philosophy. Some people, I think, get there maybe if they never, had a desire to get married, or perhaps they've gotten married and experienced that and it's like, oh, that's not for me, but I'm not going to just sit in the house. I do want companionship. I do want, all these things. And there's a lot that goes with it. Also, your belief system, if you are one that subscribes to like no sex before marriage, are you just gonna not ever do that? Or are you going to, I would like to do that. And so, I'm just saying that's all different type of experiences, right? And thoughts. And so if you connect the two, marriage and sex, then dating with no purpose to get married is probably not on your
but and so that was such a mouthful because there's so many variables in that, right? Because when you have those who are like no sex before marriage, right? That was me for a long time before I started having sex. I wasn't having sex because I was waiting for marriage. I didn't make it, clearly, but like that was the intent back then. And then you get some. And I know a lot of people who were still virgins and holding it out, but then a lot of that turned into getting married to have sex, right? Like, oh, I want to get married so I can have sex. And those conversations about partnership and the right person and building and having a spiritual, like all of those factors where I was like, I want to have sex. I'm tired of, and so then I wonder, like, the messaging that you get when you're young, and a lot of it comes from like growing up in the church, right? Let's call it a thing. If some of the true important parts of marriage get lost because the conversation is always sex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, okay, if somebody starts having sex, but it's like, okay, I'm not a virgin getting married, but all of these other things in my mindsets about marriage are intact, but I just no longer subscribe to no sex before marriage. Ooh, so we put so much emphasis on just the sex part.
Oh yeah. Well, let's look, because we can go down that rabbit hole, but let's just say we do another, because our last episode on sex and religion went up. It's one of the most popular episodes. We'll make sure to link it in this episode so that you can see it. But yeah, I agree that, oh gosh, I'm trying not to, but I agree that the focus sometimes can be solely on sex, or so much so on it, and not even necessarily just from the church, but even just within the confines of the budding relationship. It's just like, oh my gosh, that's some people, go ahead and get it out the way. Some people drag it out because that's like the dangling carrot. And I remember, talking to the Addisons and getting the feeling. That's another plug for season 1 episode, 2-parter with the Addisons, right? Like, with that not being on the table at all, right? Then it depends on how you think about it. It either forces you or allows you to focus on other things. Like, if that is not, like, we're not trying to figure out, you're not trying to game me to get me there, and I'm not trying to game you to get you there. We both know that that's not on the table. What else do you have? Right. And then those other things that you just mentioned, I think, it gives way for you to really focus on those things. Now, you can multitask. I'm not saying that you can't, but I understood that from our conversation with them. And I thought about that, like, even as a believer and one who was a virgin for a very, very long time as well. I think had it been framed in that way for us, well, I'll speak for me. Maybe I would have made it all the way. Now I don't. God bless. For those who don't remember and weren't with us, I got married at 40. So I'd have been a good AC Green up in the mix. But to God be the glory, like I guess I would have made it. But that I think would have made more sense and resonated a little deeper than just, don't do it. Or even, scaring us with and things that we needed to know, but diseases, STIs, all those types of things that were a part of our growing up, right? Those things that we saw, health class, different PSAs, so on and so forth. But to understand like the crafting of your relationship, right? You'll have the ability to really get to know somebody without this kind of looming. Because it's looming.
Right.
It's looming. So yeah. I'll say that, before we.
Yeah. And I think, the fear mongering has always been a thing, which I don't like. I think, just to your point, the messaging, and if we're talking to young people, I would talk more about the mindset around sex, like the effects and how it changes you, or could possibly change you as a person. Right? Like, how do you control this? Like the confines and the responsibility of sex. You know what I mean? Making sure, there's so much more to talk about other than, ooh, it's a sin. Ooh, you're gonna get a disease. Ooh, you can get pregnant. Right? Okay, all right, right. But also, most of the effects of sex that people experience are not STIs and pregnancy. You know what I mean? There's so much more you experience other than those two things. Yeah, they happen. But after you do it, okay, so like for me, neither of those have been a factor in my sexual experience. You know what I'm saying? And so, but other things have come up, right? And I just think that we need to be more cognizant. Why are we having these conversations? What's the end game? And not to mention, when we're talking about the church, and I don't want to deviate, but just because this is my experience, you're being taught these things by people who didn't abstain, who weren't virgins when they were married, right? It's like a lot of people, a lot of our elders got saved and got spiritual and developed strong relationships with God after they were married. You know what I'm saying? So they've never had to exercise the restraint or strength that they're trying to get us to have, and so you come up with all these anecdotes that sound good, but one of my biggest frustrations in life was I didn't do everything they told me not to do, right? And so it's like, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So I didn't do it. And that's it, right? You know what I mean? But nobody told me what to do. So it's like, hey, if I'm dating someone, right, all you're telling me is don't have sex unless you're married. You're not telling me how to communicate. You're not telling me like the prayers we should be praying. You're not telling me how to look for someone who you're financially compatible with. You're not talking about someone with a shared mindset. You're not talking about cleanliness. You're not talking about, sharing household, like all these things that make relationships and marriage work and partnership and how to build and talk future. No, it's like, hey, when you get someone, don't have sex. And that's it. We'll find someone who's a believer too. And then it's like this whole unequally yoked, which a lot of times we get wrong, whatever. And it's like, hey, find someone who's saved and then don't have sex with them.
Yep.
And that was it. Right.
And that is it.
And so, it to segue into our topic, it can convolute the dating experience, right? Because now that was teenage talk and young adult talk, right? People are having sex, but now it's like you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s. The average person is not going to abstain. You know what I mean? Not until marriage anyway, You might be more careful with whom you have sex with. It's like, and like I'm a lot more discreet now at this age than I was in my 20s, of course. In your 20s, you whoever about to let you just
Oh, God bless.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, this person, right? But now dating and sex at this age, do I need to be in a relationship to have sex? No, but it's got to be more than sex. It's like, hey, do I want to spend time with you outside of a sexual act? Like, can we talk? Can we go to the movies? Can we, hey, let's eat dinner and let's have interactions that don't involve sex? Like, can we do that? Because I want those things too. Is there a friendship and a kinship outside of the sex? We might decide, hey, we may not work together in a relationship, but we're attracted. This is what we're deciding to do. And, but I don't want to come through, boom, bam, and then see you to the next time we do it. That's not really worth my time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because now after that, I'm just counting the seconds until you leave. And I'm at a place in my life where I value my time and the experience that I have with my time more than sex as a standalone act.
Okay, well, before we turn this into a whole sex episode, we're going to slide right back into being single. Okay, now, you can tie in the two, roadies and road dogs, but we definitely want to talk about some benefits and even some challenges because much like anything, right? Like there are pros and there are cons, and depending on who you are, you may consider some things to be more beneficial and some things to kind of, be a pain in the butt. Or you might be the type that's like, I love the single life. But we also understand there are those of you who wish to be in a different chapter of your life. And so we want to talk about, ways to be content in your weight. And perhaps, move yourself into a space where you're
not
no
with the
longer
body,
waiting.
not with the body roll though.
Slide on into a position where you're no longer waiting. And so would love, at this time next year, somebody that has watched this episode come back, and comment like, girl, I'm off the market.
You're trying to get them matching pajamas, huh?
Yes, right. Come on, matching pajamas. I love it. Or whatever your equivalent is. And so we do matching shirts at Disneyland. We don't necessarily we go to Disney for holidays and we do our thing.
And y'all a few months away from Adidas suits, huh? I'm gonna have all the jokes when I see the Adidas suits.
I don't foresee those at all, but hey, if it happens, whatever he's down for, he knows I am right there. So benefits of being single, and I don't want to say that with too much vigor because I don't want anybody to think I want to be single again. But from what I recall, being independent, and I will say this, and we have a different, even in marriage, we have a different type, of course, with a military component and what we do in our professional lives. It requires us to spend time apart more than the average couple. Not all the time, thank God, but more than the average couple. So I will say that we still get a chance to experience some of these benefits, if you will, particularly for introverts who value that time to decompress and just, sit down and be to yourself, and so that I think is a benefit that you are, independently thinking and acting and feeling, and there's no requirement for you to consider not just somebody's feelings, but you have to consider them and their experience in almost everything that you do. Anything that can touch your household or you is going to inadvertently affect your spouse, and so or your significant other. And so when you are single, you get to, and we've talked about on the show before, I think about being childless though, right? Like if we want to jump up and say, hey, what you doing?
Right.
Nothing. All right, let's go. And we've done that when we were younger. It's like, hey, what you doing? Let's go. Or, each night I know where I'm going to be. Right. Versus like, hey, you home yet? I'm about to slide through. Right. What we eating? Like all of that, that's not on the agenda anymore. And not necessarily because we live so far apart, but because, now the time that I have that's not devoted to my career or, leadership pursuits or the things that go on during the day, I got to make sure that, I have time with my husband, time to connect, time to talk, time to listen, time to just be.
Wait, just.
Oh, you want to let that pause?
Yeah, we're going to just. She said time to listen. Okay.
Yeah. You gotta factor in, like you can't always be, and I do a lot of that. I do because I know he's like, and then it don't even be stuff that have nothing to do with him. I just be like, guess what?
Right.
He's like, what?
He's the sounding board.
Bless his sweetheart. Or he like this morning, he's like, oh, do you have a busy day today? I'm like, let me tell you. When I first
He got to learn how to frame them questions. It's almost like so I tell people with kids, right? Because you hear kids get in the car and the first thing the parent usually says is, how was your day?
Yeah.
Right. And it's so easy for a kid to say, good. And the parent at that age, you want more. So sometimes it's like, what was the best part of your day?
Yeah.
Right. Now I got to be careful because I'll text me with my goddaughter and I'll say that, what was the best part of your day? She was like, lunch.
The whole day.
Okay. Yeah, just lunch. I'm like, well, what was? But to say like, so as an adult, like, how did your day go? Like them super open-ended ones where you can get the whole day versus what was the best part of your day? Now you're gonna get something, but it's still like there's a focus there. Well,
I love him because he doesn't, whether or not it gets on his nerves, and I'm sure sometimes it does, like he gives me the space to do that every single time now. And he talks about like being an active listener. He's like, I can't shut it off. He's like, I hear people talk about tuning their wives out. He's like, I don't even know how to do that. So bless him. So I try to be mindful as well. But yes, the receiving it in return. And he's not a big talker. So when he does, is very important to me. And I'd like stop, like ask questions, like, right. How did that make you feel? Or, are we mad or are we okay? I need to like understand.
How do we feel? Do we still like
we feel? Yeah. So, right. Those are things that you have to factor in. And it's not that you don't want to do that for someone, particularly someone that you love, but sometimes there are things going on with you, right? That make it harder to do that. So when you're single and you don't feel good, or you just had a crappy day, or you're tired or what have you, you don't have to ask anybody about the best part of their day. You just go get in bed, right? Or what are we eating today? Self. What we going, I didn't want Italian, but okay, well, we'll go ahead and, the compromising and all of that, that doesn't exist.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot about values, right? Like which do you value more? Because that part where like you can come home and you just need to decompress because of the day you had. But sometimes you need a sounding board and you look around and you're like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I got to hold on to this, you know what I mean? And figure out ways and so everything comes, and I hate to use the word cost, but I'm going to, like, everything comes at a cost because to have someone to talk to, the cost is you have to listen usually, you know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, not only do I have someone to talk to, but I have someone I have to listen to.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Yep. So like that's listening is the price of admission. And if you're someone who like, I don't really care about your day, but I want to share mine. You probably need somebody that don't really have any days or
child.
or a
that's
super self-soother. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so that's a benefit. What would you say is a benefit as a single man?
It's just, I think, the ability to make choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a more cost effective and time effective manner.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because to your point, you have to consider less, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
life is very, it's much more linear.
Yeah.
I make this decision to do this. It is what it is, right? Or I don't have to participate in someone else's life if I don't choose. So, meaning, like, if I want to go out and do something, I don't have to either seek the approval or participation of another.
Yeah.
I just go out. I don't have someone who, if they want to go out and I don't want to, I don't have to pull myself up to do it. I don't have to participate in things that I'm not up to participating in. It's just me. So it's like, hey, I want to do this, I do it. I want to go there, I go. I don't want to do anything, and I don't have to hear like we never do anything. You know what I mean?
That part.
If I want to something, I had an experience. I was seeing somebody, didn't last long, but just she came over and we were watching shows. So now we're figuring out, hey, what do we want to watch? Something that we'll both enjoy. And then sometimes it was a compromise. Now, she didn't grow up in the States. So something you don't think about, like her television programming, right? So we're watching stuff with accents. and, I'm not rocking with that content. You know what I'm saying? Like, so she went to school in London, and it's like, a very different sense of humor. It's a different, you know what I'm saying? Like the show. And so I'm sitting there like, okay,
Right.
she's thoroughly entertained, but it made me think like long term. If we want to enjoy something together, is it always going to be a compromise? Like it's different than somebody like we're both like, hey, we about to watch and we got this show that we're both equally into, and now we're unpacking it. Like, so we're watching this show. It's for her. There's no dialogue that I want to have about this because I'm not entertained. I'm not, and it's different. She could be excited about it. Like, oh my God, that was so good. And I'm like, and now I'm seeming like a contrarian because I can point out everything I didn't like because I don't like it. And you got to maybe consciously find something that was good. Oh, well, the lighting was great. I love the cinematography, but who talks about that kind of thing, And so I think what I've learned as I've gotten older is you can't ignore the small stuff, because when we're younger, we were like, oh, you can't worry about that little thing. But those little things add up,
right.
And so if we can't enjoy our time together, right? Or you're having to force yourself to tolerate something they're enjoying, and you constantly have to go back and forth, if you even go back and forth, because sometimes it's like, I'll just watch my stuff when she's not here, and she might do something like, oh, well, I'm gonna go to bed. You want to watch? Okay, I'll just go in the other room and watch my show. Like, dang, you can't watch what I'm watching. I watch what.
Yeah. And honestly, it's about finding out what matters to the other person.
Exactly.
So I'll just say quickly, for us, like, we do that. There are very few things that we watch together, but it's important to us. So we don't, go ahead of the other person, and we watch certain things together. And then for everything else, feel free. So I'm not going to get an attitude if I want to watch something and you go downstairs, or vice versa. Sometimes though, we might sit in the bed and he'll have the TV and I'll put my earbuds on and watch something on my iPad, or vice versa. So we're still together, but you enjoy what you like. I'm enjoy what I like, but it doesn't turn into a big thing because we do have some things. Now, those British shows, I don't know which one it was, but we love a good, British series on Netflix that we can. Yeah. That's one of the things we do connect on. or something with subtitles. We're always in something with a subtitle, but
some
I
of them
get
are
it.
cool. Yeah, some of them are cool, but it's like, you know, I think there just needs to be an intersection, like the show Supercell. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
we watched that too.
yeah, but I like stuff with powers and the backstory. Like, I can rock with that. So that would be one of them ones that's like, okay, here's something for both of us.
Right.
But I'll put it to you, I don't even know what she was watching. I don't remember what it was. That's how disengaged I was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like it was the beginning of the season. Like we're in the middle of the season of something that you've been watching. You know, so I was like, yeah, you know, now that's not why I stopped talking to her. There was other stuff, but
right. That's one thing you don't have to worry about.
Exactly. That was something that I was thinking about. So a benefit, if you can call it that, is my decisions are mine.
Right.
You know, and they only objectively speaking or subjectively speaking, they only affect me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah. And I think we could cover so many benefits with that, right? My decisions are mine. And so how you spend your money, right? What you want to do in your career and how much of you it requires. Like I remember how hard I went, you know, as a single person versus now. I mean, you might say, oh, you still go hard, but it's a different way of working, right? To have those protected spaces for you and your mate. You know, you just don't have to consider someone else's feelings and well-being, their money,
you get to
everything
be selfish.
that comes with them. You get to be selfish.
You get to be selfish. And selfish isn't always a negative word, but you get to do you.
Right.
But another benefit though, and this is something that I experienced in the last 7.5 years, moving to another state. If you are intentional about yourself, like while you're single, you get the opportunity to learn more about you, right? It's a space where you grow as a person, where you learn as a person, where you improve as a person, right? And that it's time spent that can better inform you about a partner, right? Because I don't want to say it's more difficult because I haven't been married, but I venture to say it's a different experience growing and changing with somebody versus as an individual, because sometimes you grow into each other. Like I've been in long-term relationships, so the growth that's happening is kind of happening around this other person, right? Like with the mindset. But when you are with somebody, I don't want to say you lose a lot of you, but it's not a you focus from you, right? And so it's like I've learned and am learning so much about me, and I can make adjustments and stuff like that without the commentary of somebody else evaluating the change.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so now when I present myself to someone, it's always a different version. Even if, you know me, I'm always authentically and unapologetically myself. But it's like, hey, there's some growth. Now it may not seem like that, because as much as I've changed, I've also become more steadfast in things that I should have been steadfast in before, right? There's the willingness to compromise in a lot of areas, but simultaneously there's others, because I'm older and have a better understanding of some things, I won't compromise. I won't change. Like, hey, if this is not something that you can handle, right, or don't rock with you, I don't care how fine you are, how great the sex is or could be or whatever, I can't rock with you. And like, this is something that I can't compromise, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think those are the areas, like getting to know and be comfortable with yourself, being comfortable being like, there's a level of comfort that has to be gained with being single and being happy with yourself. Like I don't want to say be happy being single, but learn to be happy while single. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because we put so much emphasis, oh, I gotta find my person, and we, like we said, the matching pajamas, and like, you're forgetting to create a relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And your single life is the opportunity to strengthen that while, pursuing, finding your person.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, I think we have thoroughly covered benefits to the point where people may want to remain single. I don't know. But there are some challenges, and I think it's important to try to balance this out as best we can. But I think one of the major challenges that we all have experienced at one time or another, especially depending on your age, is feeling the pressure of, well, when are you not going to be single, right? And as we're recording this, we are inside of the type of season where that happens more times than not. When you are getting together with family, or even if you're thinking about like homecomings, right, in the fall, where you go back to school and you see all your friends, and perhaps they're coming back and showing you pictures, or now that we are connected mostly on social media, you get to see that even before you meet each other on an annual basis.
I think my name is synonymous with single.
Oh boy. So like in your 20s, it's like, okay. And then it feels like at a certain point, and maybe we'll just mark it, the 30s. I think that's when folks start looking at you. And definitely as you get deeper into, I feel like I might've been about 34, 35, before folks were really like, even I remember my dad asked me like, so like, you don't want to get married, or you don't want kids? And I was like, I can't believe that's what I'm giving off. But then I thought about it and I was like, oh, I didn't make a practice of introducing my family to just anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it looked like to them, I guess, that I, wasn't dating or didn't have any companionship or whatever the case may be. And it was just like, nah, I'm just dealing with this fool that I know is not going to be appropriate to bring, because then you're going to have other questions, right? But it is weird, unfortunate, insert whatever word you want there, that at a certain point in time, and particularly for women, because we can, tack on the whole biological clock conversation, right? It's like, well, when are you going to do it? As if you are the problem. Now, maybe you are, because we have to leave room for that.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, to just assume that, and again, this was some time ago. We're talking about, almost a decade and a half ago of just entering 30. But to have folks start looking at you, and we've seen the social media memes like, oh, if she's single at this point in time, and maybe for men too, they may have the same type of meme, right? Like, well, what's wrong with them?
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be a challenge. Like, perhaps you are not single by choice, right? You want to be, but things haven't worked out. Or perhaps you are. Why does something have to be wrong with me? Because I have chosen intentionally to take this point in time out in my life to focus on me, or to get myself to a particular place in my career. Or perhaps for young men who are saying like, hey, with all these expectations to protect and provide, I'm trying to get my situation together, get my money up, get my career profile up, get blah, blah, blah. And not necessarily to take care of a woman, but perhaps that's something that you want to do. And so I'm not interested in being out there and having to deal with all the other pressures because I'm not ready. Mm-hmm. But, we put those on folks, and that's not necessarily fair.
But that's a huge pressure for men that's put on us societally, like, because we're told you're supposed to provide.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that pressure, because so many people look at provision as solely financial. We only equate provision with finance, which is dangerous, because there's a lot of men that got money and that's it. You know what I mean? And so to think that that thing just equates with leadership, or it's a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we do get that looked at a certain way. So for somebody like me in my 40s, have never been married and I don't have children. And for a lot of women, that it's like a red flag. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh well, what's wrong with you? Like, you look like a commitment phobe. You
Mm.
look like, oh, you can't settle down, you can't blah, blah. I'm like, really? And so there's a lot of life that happens, and
Yeah.
having been single for as long as I have now been single, it's kind of like a red flag. But we don't make a lot of provisions for life to happen to people. We hear a nugget of information and then automatically make assumptions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, yeah, I got out of a tumultuous long-term relationship. I had a huge loss in my family that affected me greatly. I was in grad school. I moved to a different state and started my life over. Like, there was a lot that happened
Mm-hmm.
that did, now, did I date in some of those spaces? Yeah, I dated those. They just were situations that didn't work or turned into long-term relationships, which most
Mm-hmm.
dating situations are, you know. But I'm also somebody who I am careful, who I give my time, space, and energy to.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so I tell people I love hard. I just don't love often,
Mm.
you know. And that's just me. Now, that has benefited me greatly, and there have been times where it has served as a detriment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, you can overthink things. Somebody can show you something, and what you interpret them showing you may not be that, because there can be a communication breakdown. There can be, there's a lot of things that happen.
Yeah.
um but we just automatically think, oh, they must be this, they must be that. I think a drawback in dating right now is most people only present expectations and not offerings,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we live in this world, if a man want me, he gotta blah 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 blah. No, if I'm gonna be with a woman, she gotta da 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 da. And if you don't do this, then you're this,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I've always say, like, when you go buy a car, right? They present the features and benefits of the car, right? Like, hey, this is why it's great. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
out here looking to be chosen by somebody, how do you only present your requirements?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
see what I'm saying? Like, no. So it's like, hey, these are the features and benefits of the car. Here is the cost of the car. Now we're going to evaluate your financial readiness,
Yeah.
and eligibility to be able to purchase these features and benefits of this vehicle. There's, you know what I mean? But it also should, you know, have offerings on both sides. Like, hey, here's what I bring. Here's what I bring. But
Mm-hmm.
we've done this thing in society where we've created so many templates and said, this is how relationships or marriages are supposed to
Supposed
be.
to.
This
Yeah.
is what women are supposed to do. And this is what men are supposed to do. And then we say things like, oh, men aren't men anymore. Well, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
What is a man? And furthermore, when you're answering that question, who decided? Who created the
Right.
criteria? You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And so then we get into the real men,
Right.
or you got to start talking to men and not boys. And we always want to make these distinctions, and we got to be careful, because these distinctions are always based on subjective expectations,
Right.
right? And so, speaking from the man side, it's anytime a man doesn't display or do the things that you want him to do, now he's not a man. Or the new sexy term is calling men sassy. you
Mm-hmm.
know or I need a man that allows me to be in my feminine. And I'm sorry, but I think that's the biggest crock of BS ever. Like, what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because flip that around and see how that sounds. Well, I need a woman that allows me to be in my masculine. No.
Well,
You know what I'm
everything's
saying?
not gonna it's not gonna flip around.
And,
Everything's not gonna flip around.
but
So
I
I don't
just I think it's BS no matter how you slice it on any side. Like, you
I
are what
I
you
get
are,
I
period.
get it. I
And
get it. I
so
get it.
it's you want so many things. It's like, hey, this is what I am. This is what
Mm.
you are. Does it work together? like, you know what I'm saying? And all these variables and ifs, and this is what you supposed to look. If I'm not for you, I'm not for you. If you're not for me, you're not for me. It's really easier math than we try to make it, you know, because what all that does is it takes the focus off of we are not what we need to be to attract that which we desire. We don't, it's not a us focus. And the first place to find your mate is in the mirror.
I like it. I like it. All right. Well, there's you know, a lot of folks who are experiencing singleness and the challenges thereof. I would I sympathize because I you know, remember having the feeling of like, when is this going to happen for me? Even though I don't remember a point of time where I was like, you know, complete, like lonely. I'll just say that, right? Like, wasn't like, oh, I didn't have anyone to go out with or hang out with or talk or whatnot, but meaningful relationship that looked like what I wanted ultimately, which was marriage and family. I couldn't see it. And I was getting older. Now I look back at it and it's kind of funny, like, you know, being over 40 and people talk about like, oh, you don't really truly live until you get to 40. And I feel that way, like, oh, I was really kind of just figuring things out, or you can call it research, you know, trial and error, what have you. And now it feels like a totally different experience, chapter in life. But while you're going through it, it's just like, you know, when will I have someone to, you know, do dinner with? Who is going to be my automatic plus one? You know, all those things that you may have to think about, that when you are in a relationship or married, you're like, yes, it's us, you know? And I'm really grateful because even in life's happenings, right? Like at this age, you know, especially I would say in your 40s in particular, and we all are experiencing different things. Some people are experiencing health challenges for themselves. Others are experiencing health challenges within their families and particularly their parents. And so it is a very vulnerable time, and having that partnership and relationship is helpful with those types of experiences as well. So for those who are navigating that kind of stuff kind of by yourself, it can be hard. It's not impossible, but it's harder. And I wanted to recognize that as well. So as we talk about like unpacking relationship myths, you know, like what is it that, you know, we want folks to know that may not necessarily be the way that is presented in society, or maybe how we make ourselves feel or we've been made to feel? What would you say is, you know, a myth?
Oh, that you need to be intentional about dating.
Okay.
We say that a lot, like, oh, be intentional, be intentional. One, you don't know this person, right? And I just find it odd that we have intent about someone we don't know. We've gotten we're in this place to where we say hello and we're trying on last names, and everyone is in the beginning of an interaction being evaluated for a forever partner, and we don't spend time genuinely and organically getting to know people, right? We vet our friends more stringently than we vet a possible life partner, right? Like you and I can't trace back the day when we became best friends. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like we met, we had interactions, it grew, and then all of a sudden we're spending time, we're getting to know each other, and we created a bond. Right. We don't look at somebody who we're trying to share our life with like that. It's interview questions. You know what I mean? Like, here's a position for life potentially, and I'm not going to get you to know you as a person. I'm going to evaluate your qualifications for it, right? We don't know their character. We don't know we don't know the true person. right? And
Right.
so we get in there and then we start saying, oh, well, you're playing games and don't waste my time. But like you look up years later and you still single. So how is that
Mhm.
person wasting your time? The results are the same. Now,
Right.
had you gotten to know somebody, like how many people have we missed out on because we were rushing to a prescribed end because we want to be with somebody, you know?
Mm.
And I just think that we don't think logically enough for something we expect. We want shortcuts to something we expect to last a lifetime, right?
Right.
When we have careers, we go to school for years and we get degrees and we get entry level positions and then we move up, right? Like
Right.
anybody who's in leadership, you didn't come in leadership in that industry. You worked
Right.
your way up. But you want to enter someone's life and automatically you want the top spot, so much so that you want to eliminate or remove anyone else that's important to this person. So that's why we've
Mm.
even done episodes where we talk about friends of the opposite sex,
Right.
you know, and if this person has a best friend of the opposite, blah, 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 blah. Right. And you want that person to remove the best friend, and then we say things, I want to be your best friend. You can't. You're not truly the best friend. You know what I'm saying? So, like, a woman can't come into my life and think that she's going to erase 25 years
Mhm.
of experiences. You gotta right now. I don't, and so I say this: I don't have a vacancy for best friend. Position is filled, right? I have a vacancy for wife, and if you truly got to know me and understand what that means to me,
Right.
you wouldn't be worried about anything that's attached to the word friend. You
Mhm.
don't be so involved in trying to remove or be someone's first when you have the opportunity to be someone's last.
Right.
You
Right.
see what I'm saying? So,
Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with personal integrity. Like I hear you and I know you, right?
mhm,
But y- uh, you're exception and you're not rule. And so there are a lot of people, I'm not even going to say men, there are a lot of people that hide inappropriate relationships under the covering of friendship. This my cousin, this my whoever. And so we can't act like we don't know why people want to kind of remove these things. And I don't think that's, right to do, but I do understand the trepidation of like, the last time I was involved with somebody that, this was your bestie, it was more than that, going on. So you got to do your due diligence and have the conversations and do your
or
best.
spend the time. Like to my earlier point, like you're not wrong.
Right.
But how do you decipher that?
This was
Time.
yeah,
Yeah.
time,
You
right. Time and
right? So
conversation.
yeah, you can't just yeah.
Talk about what's important, to you, what your triggers are, because also in our 30s and 40s, you going into, a dating situation, you got some baggage and triggers.
hmm Absolutely. And
I
you
told
gotta
hashtag boo straight out. I was like, the Apple messaging sound, I didn't even realize
mhm,
how triggered I was by that.
mhm,
But I dated somebody that, had an Apple and that phone went up and it was always like, oh, it's work, it's whatever, but it wasn't.
mhm.
And so I remember, and it's so fun. We've been together for a long time now, and I don't know that I ever hear his phone go. Like it's always on vibrate or silent. Now, I don't know if that's because for me or not, but I didn't realize that until we
Mhm,
started talking. And I was just like, if you see me have some sort of reaction, like it's not you, I'm working through
mhm,
this, but like this is what happened.
mhm.
And I attached that, and that
And
somebody
but
might be
that
like, oh, she's weird, but
no,
it was
people's
a
triggers
thing.
are triggers. But that's an important distinction though. You said I'm working through it. If you see a reaction, it's not I'm working through this versus making someone else responsible for your trigger. Right.
Hmm.
That didn't create the trigger. I had to do the same thing with the question, where are you? right? I can't stand to be asked where I am. Like first thing out your mouth. Like, hello, where you at? Oh, can't stand it, right? And I still don't like it, but my reaction is different. And so what I say to what you just laid out is like, hey, when people have had these experiences, I get it, but we also have to be fair to the person that we're with, right? And so what happens is over time, when you give yourself time and organically get to know someone instead of trying to be intentional, is you build or lose trust, right? Like, hey, my experiences with you have given me trust for you. Now, you may have had trust for the person that betrayed you. I get it, but it's got to be a case by case basis.
Yeah.
You cannot hold the next person responsible for the transgressions of the last. It's hard. I know you're traumatized, you're affected. We all have been that, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of things that have happened to me that I cannot right now. The way that it does inform how I move. It informs the questions. It informs the time that I take, right? It informs how I enter these things. I'm not going to hold you responsible for what she has done to me, right?
Right.
But I refuse to be responsible for what he has done to you. But over time, we find out, hey, now I'm with this person. I trust this person. So when they say, where you at? I might be triggered by it, like, hey, I don't, right? But my reaction might be different because I can tell myself, I know her. I know the intent of her question.
Right.
And not only do I know the intent and I trust her intentions when she's asking me this. So I respond differently. But it's also, like you said, the conversation, like, hey, this is what happened to me before with that question. So if you see me reacting that way, please give me grace. It's not you. I'm working through this. But earlier on, like shortly after that, when I talk to somebody, I'm like, hey, don't ask me that because this happened to me. So now I'm expecting her to change how she moves with me based on something she ain't had nothing to do with. And that wasn't fair. You see what I'm saying? So that whole thing, as we get older, like you said, things happen to us. We have to become aware of our triggers and our traumas, and we have to be responsible for those so that the path can be clear for someone to come in. I don't think we're ever going to be totally healed, but when we can recognize those things, we can offer the opportunity for someone to work with us, or to give us grace or to help us as we're unpacking these things that have affected us in our past.
Got it. Good. Well, as we seek to land the plane, maybe we can do things a little differently and combine our final thoughts with maybe some, tips or, I guess I can focus on not necessarily, I'm not trying to give you like how to get married because I don't know if that's going to work with everyone, but I will at least try to focus on, some things that you can do to position yourself to turn toward someone in hopes of connecting with someone. And, I don't know what you would like to focus on for your final thoughts, but something that, a takeaway, a little action item that they can do. And so, for me, I would say that, again, everyone considers, getting married, kind of as like the goal. And I just want to reiterate that it's not the goal for everyone. And even if it is, unfortunately, everyone's marriage does not last or doesn't necessarily pan out in the way that you expect. So the most important thing is to be, I was going to say intentional, but that's the word, as intentional as you can about taking care of yourself. Because whether you're single, whether you're married, God forbid, if you are, widowed, or if you're in a situation where you're divorced or on the other end of a breakup, you are with you through all of that. And so it doesn't make sense for you to be completely miserable trying to chase a particular state. And working on ourselves sounds cliche, but I will tell you it's in that place that many of us have wound up either finding or clearly seeing the person that we are now with, right? When I stopped trying to do all the things, just like, you know what, let me get myself together. And we were having a conversation, I think yesterday at the tail end of a recording about someone saying like, oh, my husband is still being worked on or something like that. It was to something effect, right? But, funnier.
It was God is still working on my husband.
Okay, right.
And he's almost done with him.
And he's almost done, right? And so to take that, to realize that, there's work on each of us that needs to be completed or at a certain place before sometimes we are allowed in someone's space. When I think about my husband and, the beauty of his character and his personality would have been totally wasted on me in a particular time, because I was so focused on this or that, or not paying attention, too selfish, whatever the case may have been. Like the things that I say now, I may not have said or thought back then, right? To say, oh, there's time to talk and time to listen. That's as a result of being with someone that I care about what they feel and what they say, because I know that that's reciprocated. Now, in the past, it may have been more important that somebody just listens to what I say. Like, are you a good listener? Because that's really all you good? And not that I didn't listen, but now considering that as a priority. And so that's what I think I would, share and leave you with again as a tip. If you are not ready to make yourself sometimes be in the back seat, or at least the passenger seat while somebody else is driving, this might not be for you. There are times where you have something that you feel is important, but you got to look over and go, is this the right time to bring this up? Good or bad? Good or bad. It might not even be bad news. It might be celebratory news, but they having a horrible, no good day. It's like, is this going to help make them feel better, or is this going to make them feel worse? Right? Or vice versa. I have a hard truth I need to deliver. Is this the time for me to do that? Or how can I do that? I notice sometimes there are things that I may want to address. And I know the Lord has been working with me about, like, you do it first. Sometimes I don't even have to say anything. It's just shifting my own behavior, shifting my own attitude, shifting my own whatever it is. And I look up and we are in alignment. And I'm like, whew, you saved me a conversation that honestly I don't even want to have. Right? And I know some of the women, you got to feel me. Like, you just want them to know, like, no, why ain't, now, you should just, no, why? Right? And sometimes it's really about us just doing whatever it is. And that falls in line with what Barzini was saying. Like, who do you have to be to attract what you want or who you want? It definitely starts with us first. And then lastly, just putting yourself out there. I think I wanted to say, turning yourself toward being open for relationship and companionship. Like, and I know particularly Black women, we don't like to be told to smile. But as a Black woman, I feel like I can say to another Black woman, just like we could use the N-word with each other, like, it's okay to smile. Now, I'm not saying walk around with all your teeth hanging out your face, but be cognizant of what you're putting out into the world, understanding that men have the gargantuan task of approaching us more times than not. And so perhaps if we were, more inviting, and I mean that, like, if you catch eye contact with somebody and you smile, right? Or some sort of something, as my bishop would say, put your sign in the window, let them know it's okay to approach. So again, I'm not saying, you're just supposed to walk around smiling all day, every day. But again, when we start talking about being intentional, those are the things that you want to pay attention to. How are you posting on social media? right? What types of pictures and videos and different things are you putting out there? Because what I have come to find out, yeah, men like to look at different things and images, but they don't necessarily want that from you. Like, hold on. Tuck that in, reel that back. And I'll let the man say that for himself, but that's what I have gathered from the men that I've been in conversations with and have been friends with. It's like, yeah, that's cool. But not so much if, we're going to be together. And so, yeah, navigating that can be hard, but hopefully it helps. And like I said, this time next year, come back to this episode and let us know if you are no longer single in your 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
Go ahead, friend.
Ooh, I got so many thoughts, so I'm trying to reel them in. I'm gonna give a couple of like an observation and an experience, right? And then try to tie it in. So one of my social media friends, like we don't know each other in real life, but I just saw her post. She was putting together a chair or something like that, right? And then the caption was like, "Oh, I can't wait to get me a man so I don't have to do stuff like this," right?
Guilty.
And I was like, do we exist for manual labor? Like just to come in? Like I understand the part where you don't want to carry water, but that came with an offering, right? Like, hey, I'm a dude. I don't mind doing this, but I don't want to do that.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yes,
right now, I don't know what her offerings were, but it's kind of like you see this offering. I can't wait to have a man so he can do this and he can do, as if we just live to
reach things.
It's like, hey,
point. I don't think we don't mean it like that's all you do, but it is good to hear that perspective.
But to your point, be careful what you are putting out and what you present. So again, you're all these expectations, not offerings. And it's like, you're not saying I'm looking for a man with character and blah, 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 blah. And
put that on that shelf.
Yeah. Lift heavy things. You see what I'm saying? And put things together and
kill bugs
for me. Yeah, kill bugs and risk your life for me, right? Like
that's not a good.
Exactly. Another experience I had, I was out with the fellas. We were at a bar or whatever, and I was standing outside talking to one of the homies, and then there was this lady standing by. Now it's late night, and I guess she had gone to the car and she's walking back to the establishment. So I had stopped her. I was like, "Hey, do me a favor." I introduced myself. Like, "Hey, do me a favor. And, like, don't go to your car alone like that." And she was like, "No, I'm good." I was like, "I know you don't know me, but I would have walked down there. Like, are you good?" What I'm saying? Like, she gave me the excuses. "Oh, I'm good. I can take care of myself." And I said, hey, let me share something with you. Black men, as a black man, we're always told to protect black women, right? I'm trying to protect you. Let me do that. You're giving me every excuse why you're good. And then when you truly need protection, we gonna look at you and say she good. She good. Right. So I'm just listen. This is a black man. I don't know. I'm just meeting you. All I see is a black woman putting herself in possible danger in an area you do not live in and possibly don't know. You're by yourself. Let me protect you in this moment. You may follow it or not, right? But I want you to be safe is all.
Right.
And so she thanked me like after that, but the fact that I got to explain,
right.
You see what I'm saying? And so it's kind of like you have expectations, and I'm talking to men and women. We have expectations, but we often don't clear the path for these expectations or desires to be met. We want things and we don't possess that which would attract or reciprocate a lot of these expectations. We are so focused on what we can get that we're forgetting to, while we are single, work on what we offer, right? And so we keep posting and talking about what we want to bring in our life, but never do I hear, I can't wait to have a man that I can do this for. I can't wait to get a woman that I can do this for.
Yeah.
Right. you don't hear, and this is a true feeling from mine. I have so much love to give. And the frustration is a lot of times I don't have someone to give it to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Are there things that I desire? Absolutely, of course. Nobody wants to be with somebody and you're not benefiting from the relationship. But also when you're filled with so many things I want to talk about, so many things I want to experience with somebody, so many shows I want to binge with somebody, so many, I feel like cooking and I'm the only one that gets to taste it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that I want to do for someone. But I have not found very many where the path is clear to do that. Also, when you evaluate the ROI, a lot of the math does not match up. Right. And so we don't create spaces that invite people to want to choose us, because we're so self-focused on what we can receive, and we don't look in the mirror and I challenge you, anyone who is watching this or listening to this, challenge yourself and ask yourself, what do I truly have to offer? And am I presenting that? Am I presenting a path to be able to offer it? Yes, a lot of times we have offered things and given things and it wasn't reciprocated and it wasn't returned and we were hurt. I get it. I've been there.
Yeah.
But if you truly want something, you have to put yourself out there and offer it again. You dust it off and offer it to someone else. And if they drop it, you dust it off and you offer it to someone else. And if they drop it, you dust it off and you find someone else, because it's a numbers game. And there's going to be someone who is going to look at that and be like, oh, snap. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be brand new anymore, but there's somebody who appreciates antiques.
Right.
You feel me? There's someone who's nostalgic. Oh, this thing, blah, 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 blah. Right. And so be mindful of what you're presenting and what you're projecting. Right. And then also be mindful of what you're consuming, because what you consume, you're going to regurgitate. Yeah. And a lot of times it may not even be your experience. So if you want something good in your life, consume good things, right? If you want someone attractive, be attractive. Do your best to be as attractive as possible. If you want someone who's intelligent, do your best to feed yourself with things. If and be wise, right? You have to become that which you desire, because it's going to, not even advertently, just by proxy, put you in the presence and the places of those type of people that you desire. Right. And so we often, just by nature, we desire that which we are not. There is often a gap between who we think we are and what we present, or how someone else sees us. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm a good man, I'm a good woman. If you are so dope, then why haven't you been chosen? Why are you still on the market? And to answer that, we like to say, oh, because these women out here and these men out here and the dating pool got pee in it. And I always say this, I know a lot of these people that say it. Somebody's talking about the dating pool has pee in it with a blue crowd around them.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So with that, like, change the mindset, change the focus, and be mindful of what you present, y'all. So those are my final thoughts. So y'all, with that, we thank y'all for being along on the ride. Again, do not forget, subscribe to the YouTube and go to the patreon.com/the Crossroads, THEXROSSROADZ. We appreciate y'all, the day ones and the 1 days, all the same. But until next time, this has been the Crossroads Podcast. And in closing, always remember,
be free to be you.
We love y'all. See you next week.
This has been the Crossroads Podcast. And remember, be free to be you.